Yes, I think we are live. Fingers crossed we are. But, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone is doing well. It is a very happy birthday to me. Um, Bit of a chill day, I'd say. Very, very chilled day. Very laid back, very relaxed. Not too much going on. Not too much chaos, shall we say. So, I'm very chilled. I'm all set up for the next hour or so. I hope you are chilled out as well and good to go for the next hour yourselves. Aside from that, hope everyone is having a smashing Monday. Uh, just a smashing Monday in general. No, the weather's not that great. Got caught in a torrential downpour in town earlier today, so that was fantastic stuff. Lovely stuff. Um, but what we're going to be discussing in this stream today, and straight away, Shazam, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And Big T, you too, good to see you. Let's talk Mbappe to Saudi. Football is finished now, surely. That is one of the discussions, one of the topics that we're going to discuss, that we're going to have a little read into as to what's going on there, because apparently that bid, that Saudi club, can't remember which one it was, the bid they put in is actually being accepted, supposedly, by PSG. So we're going to get into that. As for everyone else, if you haven't done so already, make sure you're smashing a like as you join the stream. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because that helps the channel grow. We've surpassed 40 subs as well, and we're on the road to 50. We are growing slowly but surely. Progress is progress, and trust the process, everyone. Trust the process, but we will get into that. As for the other topics we're going to be talking about, as the title of the video suggests there, Harry Kane, is it still a possibility? Because obviously with things going on as the window goes on, people will keep recycling news stories just to indulge in fresh speculation, even though the story's kind of the same. But it's the least you can really expect, to be honest. We've also got Rasmus Højlund, obviously that, you know, things are going on there. As we know, the terms are basically agreed. I think it's just the case of the transfer fee between the clubs being agreed, and then it's basically the deal is done. Basically, it's a done deal. We're just sat waiting for agreements to happen, and in happy days we can all sing and dance and enjoy all other uh, all other of life's low hanging fruits. Obviously, the Mbappe stuff we're going to delve into, because there's, yeah, inquiries were made by the club into Mbappe. God only knows how on earth they're going to do that. I mean, maybe, just a thought, a speculation. Maybe they're not inquiring about Mbappe this summer. Maybe they're inquiring about him next summer. But then again, who knows? If they're talking to the club, that's no point, because he ain't going to be at PSG next year. So maybe they're talking to his representatives and just asking, what's the plan? What's the plan? What is the plan with the man that is Mbappe? We're also going to cover some of Amrabat's news that has basically just reaffirmed news that I think most of us already knew, that the deal is very easy to do, that the asking price is quite realistic, quite an easy price to pay for. About 30 million euros has been mentioned again, which translates about to the 26 million pound mark that we've previously spoken about there, and we are alleged favourites for this for this transfer to happen. So that's got me feeling a bit more vibey, a bit more positive in those regards. Uh, Big T, PSG wants a striker and have money to spend. We best sign up who we want quick before PSG go knocking. Exactly, and Rasmus Højlund is one of those targets. So if Ten Hag is after Højlund, guess what? You better get Højlund quick. I mean, let's be honest, right? I suppose there's one stumbling block for PSG regarding Rasmus Højlund, and that's the fact that Højlund wants United. He knows that there's a deal that is probably going to happen with United, so he'll probably say no to PSG at every single hurdle until he gets his move. But if the move doesn't materialise for a long, long, long time, he will probably have to weigh up his options again. So that's when we'll probably see him maybe start thinking about PSG if this goes late into the window. But I can imagine PSG won't sit around for the whole window waiting for Rasmus Højlund to sort his things out, to sort his stuff out. So I mean, I think it's basically just it's a one horse race, even though that PSG are reportedly in this race for Rasmus Højlund. I think it's just an easy deal for us to do. Simple deal for us to do. Um, do you think PSG would go on for KANE? I think it's a very realistic possibility. I think it's a very realistic possibility. I mean, Bayern Munich, they're looking at Harry Kane as well, obviously, probably the most progress made in any transfer dealings for Harry Kane. And I think Daniel Levy will probably be much more likely to accept, shall we say, um, the transfer proposals from PSG because they're not a Premier League rival club. So I think it's probably an easier pill for Daniel Levy to swallow because after I think it was Joe Lewis came out and said that look, Harry Kane, if he's not going to negotiate a new deal, we've got to sell him this summer, and it's got to happen this summer. And I think Harry Kane's camp have also said they're not renewing their contract on their end of things. So I think we all know which way this is going. Harry Kane is definitely on the way out of the club, and it's just more the question as to where he goes. Who is it he goes to? Who is it that signs him? Manchester United are, I think, the outsiders in this deal, even though a lot of people think there's going to be this last late swoop. But there's a few walls of doubt that I think surround or shroud this deal from being a reality. And it's probably lying around the fact that Harry Kane is going to cost a lot of money. We'd need to sell a lot of players just to fund that transfer, right? Because supposedly the money that we've had available, the publicly stated funds that we've got to play with, we've used most of it up. Højlund is just about enough to get into the last remaining amount of the budget. PSG can cover Kane's wages. Exactly, yeah. I mean, if you're talking money, PSG ain't got no problem with that. They ain't got no problem with that. They're so filthy rich. Those guys could sell Mbappe and could sign him up for double the money next season. They've got that much money to burn. It literally is bottomless pits of cash for PSG. So no one's wages are going to be a problem at all. I think it's just solely if anyone gives enough of a damn in France to worry about wage caps or anything like that. But I don't think there's really anything to do with anything to worry about there. I think it's all just FFP side of things. Once you tick that box, we're all oodie lalies, we're happy. We're happy with everything. Shazam says if Martial somehow manages to stay, who starts between him and Højlund? I think Højlund. He's got to be Højlund. I mean, I think the way Ten Hag is sort of angling things, the way he wants to go, we're probably going to see that Martial, because he's not consistently fit enough to play game after game after game, what you would end up doing is if someone's more fit than Martial and has got quite a high level of priority in the squad for that position, what would you rather do? Play the fit player and have him play most of your games and have your unfit player occasionally be subbed in to fill the extra minutes, or play the unfit player ahead of the fitter player and see him take the minutes until he gets injured and almost stump the amount of minutes or consistent starts or run of games for Rasmus Højlund. I think Ten Hag would opt to go with a Højlund starting more consistently for more games because I think it's just the case of the injury record. I think as far as quality goes, because Martial's quality is not really a guarantee anymore. It's not like Martial, say, 3-4 years ago, where that guy was hella dangerous. Unfortunately, he's not quite that same sharp edge. He's not the sharp edge anymore. He hasn't got the cutting edge. But Rasmus Højlund, if he comes in, he's I think it's just the more reliable option. I think he is going to be the much more reliable option. So I think that's probably where Ten Hag's going to go. That's probably the direction he'll want to go in. Um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in that regards. But yes, as for the Harry Kane transfer, I don't think that's really going to happen. As much as people are living in hope that we'll see the deal get done, like a late swoop for the player, as obviously discussed with Bayern Munich interested. I think if aspirationally, if Harry Kane's ambitious and he wants to go potentially win trophies, Bayern Munich is a sound option. But then if PSG come calling, you know, equally a sound option. I mean, you're guaranteed to win trophies at PSG because it's not really a competitive league. Um, and obviously, money's not an issue, so you could get a massive, comfortable pay rise as well. Let's not forget that. Mm. And if you're Harry Kane at the age of 30, any pay rise on top of a contract, that's probably quite fruity, quite sweet. It's probably going to get even sweeter. I hope he's got a sweet tooth because that PSG contract, if he's going to get any interest from PSG, whew, that money is going to be really, really, really juicy. Really, really juicy. To be honest, if I'm Harry Kane, now I'm calling Saudi and asking what they are offering. I suppose, yeah, I think I think it depends really from Harry Kane's camp whereabouts that they'd be happy to go. Because I know Harry Kane's still probably chasing a few sort of collectibles, shall we call it, in the Premier League, such as the goal scoring records and all of that. So maybe Harry Kane's not thinking, oh, I'm definitely moving abroad. He's probably sat there thinking, well, yeah, if I can stay in this country, the better. Daniel Levy's thinking, you're not going to a Premier League rival. Joe Lewis is saying, well, I don't care if, yeah, I don't care what happens. If it's the case that he gets sold, we get money, cool. If he signs a new contract, cool. You know, either way, either direction that decision goes, it's a win for me. So everyone's sort of in different camps with this, I think, on the Spurs side of things, but it really just depends on where it is Harry Kane really wants to go. Despite there being a lot of money, I mean, we've seen a few offers for certain players come from Saudi Arabia and get turned down, and we've heard just how lucrative those offers are, or offers were as well. So I think it's that side of the element as well. Trophies are nice, but securing my family's future for generations to come is too good to resist for most. There is that is true. That is true. Um, I think again, it literally just boils down to what people would want to do. I mean, there's with the way the Saudi Arabian League is going on, there's all sorts of things that every department, every element of this league seems to be very spoilt in riches. It's like if I were to become like a partnered content creator for the Saudi league, I could sit there and say, well, if you think I'm that good, I would like you to pay me $1,000 per day, $1,000 per day, just in what $1,000 per day, regardless of what it is I'm doing, then I will come and content create for you. I will move out to Saudi. I'll do it. It's like there's a lot of people from different backgrounds, especially from the footballing front, that could probably, you know, essentially milk that teat, shall we say, that cash cow. Um, and I think it really, I suppose if it's, I don't know how much about Kane's aspirations are, you know, revolving around money, because I don't really know how much Kane is or chasing after the money, if you know what I mean. Agreed. Southgate can't drop him from the squad because he is playing in a lesser league. Um, I'm not too sure actually. Probably, I mean, I suppose it's not really the case. I suppose you could look at it from Portugal's perspective, where Cristiano Ronaldo, he plays in the Saudi league as well, but he's occasionally started for the Portuguese national team. So whether that's the same, whether that holds the same acumen from a player's perspective, if you're playing in the Saudi league, that if you're at your previous club in a European league, if you were starting for your country, if you're moving to the Saudi league, you don't suddenly become a terrible player overnight just because you've gone to a lesser league. It's just, how much is that player being challenged in that league? I suppose is the only question that you really pose that player. Um, but if the talent's still there, there's no real reason to see any point in dropping a player from the national squad because they've gone to a different, lesser league. It's kind of like Lionel Messi. He's gone to the MLS. There's a very low quality league compared to other leagues in the world. But do Argentina suddenly drop him because he's gone to the MLS? Well, not really, because he's still Messi. It's still the same quality, so he's probably going to still start for the national team. And I think that's probably going to be the same example from Kane's perspective. Big T says, on a bigger picture, I do think the money from rich states is ruining football. I'll tell you what it's doing. It's disbalancing everything. It's disbalancing everything, and it's challenging a lot of people's ambitions, a lot of players' ambitions, where I think you'd expect it from players in their 30s thinking, well, I'm winding down from the competitive aspect. The leagues are getting too fast for me. And it's quite hard work to play game in and game out. I'd like to move to a league. It used to be like the MLS was the place to go to for retiring footballers or older footballers. But now there's a Saudi league where they're picking talents left, right, and centre, and you're getting extortionate wages that you weren't getting, that are way more there are way more lucrative contracts being offered from Saudi than there are at Europe's best clubs. And it's like, well, I think most players, where you could say that maybe it was meant to be the league for retiring legends, or the competition with the MLS to basically draw you know, legends in the later stages of their careers over there, rather than off to across the Atlantic. I think what we've got now is, because there's so much money in that league being offered, that all the younger guys also want to go. All the younger players are thinking, well, Jesus, I'm more than happy to go play in the Saudi league, but just got to show me that money and I'll come. And the Saudi clubs have gone, ooh, okay, here's the money. The players then move. And that's the thing. It's the case that it's just going to be a lot of players being challenged, their ambitions being challenged. Um, if it's a choice between a European Super League or all decent players going to the Saudi League for riches, would you prefer a European Super League? I think it's one of those where if it depends on the structure of the idea for the European Super League. I'll be down for it if it was something that is that I think is fair and is of as much inclusivity as possible for every club, that every club can potentially get to that Super League, dependent on how well run the clubs are, or how if a multi-billionaire takes over of a smaller club, that they can climb the ranks and then end up in qualifying for a European Super League. It would pose itself as a new idea. It would pose itself as like a new flavour for us as football fans, the consumers of the product, that we can enjoy something perhaps a little bit different. Obviously, we'd want I think the structure of how the game is, like, we don't want to see what the MLS have done, or what we'd seen with the Arsenal game, where we get 90 minutes of football, but then there's a penalty shootout at the end of it, which, regardless of what happens in the result, in the 90 minutes, you play a penalty shootout. Hopefully, we don't ever have that. Not an idea like that where it just completely changes like the rules, or bends essentially what football, or the long-standing structure of football matches. But maybe the format of competitions might be interesting if they sort of experiment with it a bit, and make things a bit more exciting, a bit more refreshed and new than what the Champions League is offering. I'd be open to a Super League. I would be open to a Super League, but that's the thing. It really depends on how that Super League is structured, because the first idea that they had, some people liked it, some people, well, I think most people hated it. I hated the previous one, where it's like you can travel all over the world and playing in the Super League, and you'll only play against like a select 15 teams or something, and it's like that's such a closed shop, such a closed shop competition. And like the talk that you could get some people that some clubs that could qualify for it, and then other clubs that might get relegated from it, but you'll always get the same like 10 to 12 clubs always there regardless of what happens. And it's just like it was so closed shop. And the fact that you'd be traveling from like all over the world to play these games, and potentially what you'd have is, 1 week you're playing in London, the next week you're playing in Los Angeles, the next week after that you'll play in South Africa or something. And it's just like you're treating a mid-season league as though it's like a pre-season tour, if you know what I mean. Like where we last season's pre-season tour, we went to Asia. This pre-season tour, we've traveled to the US, and it would look a bit like that, but it'd be happening all throughout the season, throughout the calendar season, all throughout it. And it's just, I don't like that idea. If I was a player, I would hate doing that, traveling all over the world for literally a massive chunk of the season. Like a lot of travel. I'm not a guy that likes traveling a lot, right? Just and just on face value, I don't like traveling a lot. So if I was a footballer, I'd hate the idea of the Super League. There might be more money in the bank, but I'd hate the idea of just having to travel everywhere every other week. Getting on a plane, like the average time you spend in a day is on a plane. Imagine that. Yeah, it's not for me. Not for me. Maybe for others, but Jesus, not for me. Um, I think as far as the Saudi league goes, with all the riches, I think the Premier League perhaps can challenge that, but because of FFP, FFP is the limiter. They stuck the limiter on how much or how free the club's expenditures are. So you don't really see a French club come out of nowhere and suddenly start spending hundreds of millions of pounds every single transfer window. Like you wouldn't see that. Like it's like the Liga. Real Madrid and Barcelona get the biggest cuts of winnings and earnings in the league. Then Atletico below them, and then all the other clubs get a few penny droppings here and there, a few bits of pennies there. There's structures in these leagues that I think have screwed over most of what those leagues would need to do to actually progress and be a challenger to the Premier League. And I think what Saudi League have got is where they're not tied to FFP. They are not tied to FFP whatsoever, unless it's a FIFA thing, and unless FIFA, like a globalized footballing governing body, turns around and says, well, actually, every league has got to conform to a max cap of this or that, which I don't think they would have the rights to do. I don't know. I don't know what the politics behind that would be, or where that would sit. But I think the problem with UEFA is that they've got the FFP thing, so it stops all of these other clubs from being able to be more competitive financially. So you get these sort of few clubs for these different countries around Europe. But the problem is now all of those big earners in all of the other clubs around Europe, right, in all the other leagues, they've also run into money troubles as well. Who's not run into money troubles? Everyone in the Premier League. Everyone in the Premier League. So everyone at these clubs is like, well, that's not fair that the Premier League have got all this money. Let's go make a Super League. Yay! That's pretty much the premise of where this Super League initially came from. If the Super League was another tier where all participants finish first in their domestic leagues the previous season and then go back to the domestic league following the season, I would be down. I suppose, I'll tell you what, a European Super League is where it's a league where all the champions, the actual champions in the domestic leagues competed. It's like the Champions League. It's called Champions League. but there's loads and loads and loads of clubs competing in Champions League that aren't champions, and they will never be champions. So it's like, why are they there? where where is the champions in Champions League? It doesn't really make any sense for namesake. It's a bit of a head scratcher, a lot of question marks, and you don't really know, what you should accurately call the Champions League anymore. So I think a Super League, I suppose, if the Super League prioritizes that the actual champions of each league actually are the only clubs that play, then it's like you could sit there and say, oh, well, actually, to be fair, if you're a football fan, right, there's one of these fans that you actually back the club from your country in the Super Leagues or the Champions Leagues, then having this idea would be a dream for you. Obviously, if it's down to me, being a United fan, and it wouldn't be United in the Champions League, being the case that we weren't champions, I wouldn't be happy with that. I'd be like, I want United to be in the Champions League, so let's go try and be champions. I'll tell you what it is. It would change the incentive. It would change the incentive of a lot of clubs, and a lot of clubs would start taking things a lot more seriously. I'll tell you that much. You'd see Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, United, all of these clubs would start thinking there was 4 spots for Champions League, there were 2 spots for Europa League, and there was 1 spot for Conference League. They remove all of that, you get 1. There's 1 spot for intercontinental competition, 1 spot, and your club, you must do the absolute utmost best to get your club to qualify for that 1 spot. I think every club starts, the competing between clubs goes up tenfold straight away. None of this, well, let's try and experiment, let's go on a process for like 3, 4, 5, 6 years, like what Mikel Arteta is, or Arsenal, what Mikel Arteta is doing. You're straight away, you're gunning for the best, on the best in class that's on the market. You're doing everything you can to absolutely just juice up your clubs, right, to be able to actually get into the lucrative and actual, like, honourable spot that is qualifying for a competition by winning your domestic leagues. And I think the fact that, because Champions League, I know there's a lot of people that say, well, you'd rather win Champions League over Premier League. I mean, that's all cool and all, but you can win a Champions League without ever winning a Premier League. And that, a part of that just doesn't really sit quite right with me. I would like the honour of being someone that can win the Champions League because I won the Premier League, right? It has a nicer ring to it. A much nicer ring to it. As far as other competitions go, potentially where you stick a competition before, um, or at the end of the season, or at a certain point in the season where there's, like, I know sometimes some leagues have winter breaks. Well, some leagues have winter breaks. What if the Premier League introduced a winter break, right? And there was this competition in the middle. I mean, I don't know. It depends really on what the governing bodies of football think and what the mass majority of fans think. There's just ideas. We're sort of speaking on hypotheticals. I think it's all something to play around with and experiment with, and sort of put everything on the table and sort of include fan opinion with this. I think that's probably the best way to go about actually doing it. But because it's so, constricted and only ruled by those with the most money, fans are never going to see any luxuries of getting any say about where football goes, and that's a travesty. That's an absolute travesty in and of itself. That would allow alternative winners each year, both Super League and domestic leagues. So I see so what you're saying is that the Premier League winners, the one that wins the Premier League, goes to a different league, like the next tier up from domestic leagues. And so the Champions League is its own season. So it's basically all the European competitions. There is one league that sits above that, and all of the champions of each club will be decisively the clubs that go into it, and the champions of the Super League are the only ones that get to stay. How about that? How about that? The champions of the Super League, it's the only club that gets to stay in the Super League. Everyone else gets relegated. The 20-team format or something. Imagine that. That would be crazy. That would be absolutely crazy. But it would pose an interesting idea. Some people might not like it. Some people might think it's a genius idea. I think again, it depends really what the fans want, how the fans feel. Because I suppose if you introduce something that the fans don't like, there's going to be huge amount of protests. But it's always worth sticking an idea on a table just to test the water, see what people actually think about it. Let's do it. I'll draw up the contracts. Have you got some big juicy bank accounts that you haven't told us about, Big T? Have you got a spare couple trillion pounds lying around somewhere in the Cayman Islands or something? Got a business that's got a huge amount of cash in circulation, hiding it from tax. You do big monetary tax evasions by sticking all of your entities in the Cayman Islands. But it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting topic. I know some people would like to see a change to Champions League, but I think as much as we can get as far as inclusivity is concerned, I suppose one thing I would like to see be done is FFP basically become next to non-existent. Because I'll tell you what, if FFP becomes next to non-existent, there is absolutely there's no excuse for a club to turn around and say, well, we're not going to spend this summer. You can't say there's FFP to stop you from spending now. That's the only thing that I would really want to see, like really, really desperately want to see change. But I suppose as a football fan, as a consumer of the of sporting content, I'm open to ideas. I am open to ideas, and I'm interested to see what plans people have. But we'll have to see. Let's go on to Amrabat here. Amrabat. Now, for those of you that have been around in the channel for a long, long time, or will have known that I've put out an Amrabat video where I basically took a little bit of a deep dive into the player, and basically discussed what he could have to offer. And I think Amrabat is, as I called it back then, a cheap steal. And the good thing is that monetary value, that transfer value, or player transfer or market valuation, it's not changing, despite the increase of interest. They're not changing, they're not upping prices, they're not fluctuating prices all the time based off the interest level. And Manchester United are in the driving seat for the deal, despite Amrabat most publicly claiming he wants La Liga moves. I'd say, look, this is the easy deal to be done. You could literally sell a couple of players, and the second you do that, the Amrabat deal is instantly possible. We know Alanga's out the door now. He's doing his medicals with Nottingham Forest. So, good luck to you, long-haired Yeti, with Anthony Alanga. Fingers crossed everything works out for you. And I suppose same thing with Dean Henderson. Fingers crossed it's not another loan deal, because, God, I could not get my head around the idea that we potentially end up loaning him to Nottingham Forest for another season. I mean, please, God, don't let that happen. But FFP is non-existent now for rich clubs who can break it and just pay the fine, or they can just rack up hundreds of thousands of charges found by whichever footballing governing body. Not to say that Man City are actually guilty of those charges. They've got some real suspects. Yeah, stuff that's gone on down the years. 100% they've got some mad suspect stuff that's gone down throughout the years. But, it's just like with the justice system, technically speaking, innocent until proven guilty. And it's just a case really of waiting until, something like that gets found out to being legitimately guilty. So we'll have to see on that front. But as far as FFP goes, it literally is the only thing really that holds clubs from spending stupid amounts of money, but it also is it's basically a barrier that people can use as like a shield, like the club's boards and everything can use it as a shield by saying, well, we can't do as much of this and what we want to do because there's FFP are stopping us, or FFP is in the way. We can't do what we want to do. We can't spend money on that player or buy that player. You know, if we push FFP out there, the fans can't sit there and say, "Oh, that's a load of lies. That's BS. That's bullshit." They can't say that because maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Who knows? But because FFP is there and there's constantly clubs breaking FFP for whatever other reason aside from spending lots of football, spending lots of money. Jesus, imagine football becomes a currency. I know they tried to do the fan token things, but that went down absolutely. That went down the shitter. But even so, I mean, FFP. Who knows what the boundaries for different clubs at different levels with FFP is? Who knows? Just scrap the whole thing. Just scrap the whole thing. Look, if clubs, things that happen like Leeds. I mean, some people say what FFP is there to stop things from like Leeds happening again, where they spent loads of money and screwed up the finances and ended up having to drop down leagues for it. The independent regulator for a Premier League will probably stop that. How they stop it, I don't know, but maybe they get given, the power, the ability to actually stop, uncontrolled expenditures from clubs that they don't have the right amount of money to actually, sustainably, um, to sustainably keep the operations going, regardless of what happens. If they sign loads and loads of players, hundreds of millions of players, they no longer have hundreds of millions, but they don't have the success and returns. If a club acts stupid, let them be stupid. The fans listen. The fans will be much more influential if it gets highlighted a lot more when a club's board or ownership, does stupid things. It's one of those things. Agree. It's virtually non-existent on big clubs. 100%. I mean, it's. I suppose I don't know if you could say that it's like the thing where it's like one rule for one, another rule for another. I don't know because I think because it's like with the revenues, like with the FFP, where if you generate a lot of revenue, you can spend more money than a club that generates less revenue. So, figuratively speaking, if you're a club that has a 30,000 seat stadium, regardless of how much money you get from like, competition winnings and whatnot, if the money that the club is earning, from everything else, um, as a club that has a 30,000 seat stadium is never going to financially be allowed to compete like on even grounds with a club that has a stadium with 70 to 80,000 seats. And it sounds all manners of screwed up, but essentially the way that it's structured, it kind of like when you look at it from that perspective, that's essentially what happens. And it doesn't literally makes no sense to me if an owner is rich and they own a club, because that's the thing. I think there's only two clubs in the Premier League of last season that were not billionaires. Everyone else is a billionaire, and it's just like, well, Jesus Christ, they've got billions to spend, but there's only like three or two, three clubs that will be more than happy to spend, that much money and invest in the club that much money. I suppose it's more the case that some owners are not as they don't have as many aspirations as other clubs do. It's like Man City ownership. As much as they might have broken every rule in the book that there is to break, at least they've acted to get the club up into relevancy. At least they've acted. They've done stuff. They've done things. They've tried to be proactive. We're trying to grow the club. Now, whether it's been, I know some of the stuff they've done is mad hella shady. It's like the revenue sources. It's like a stadium that they don't have anywhere near the capacity of Manchester United, or the global reach as Manchester United. Yet they generated like hundreds of millions of pounds worth of revenue more than Manchester United did. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. It's a proper head scratcher. But anyways, as crack on with the Amrabat thing, as BT's reminded me here. Do you think Amrabat and Casemiro could play side by side together, or will it be either or? I'd say I think it's probably case scenario based, right? I think it is case scenario based. If, say, for instance, because I mean, Amrabat and Casemiro are similar. They can offer similar on a football pitch. I think what you would want to see is if there's a tough game where your spine, like your midfield, your spine, your structure, how well you are structured defensively gets tested. Amrabat and Casemiro will be a very strong insurance policy to have. And I think Ten Hag would know that. So I can see Ten Hag saying, well, if we've got Amrabat and Casemiro, I will play both of them together, to lock out in moments of pressure games at Anfield, at the Etihad. I mean, maybe at the Emirates. I don't really know, because I mean we've just beaten them in pre-season. God only knows if they're going to have the same level of success, or whether we can just strut into North London and bitch slap them again. I don't know. Depends on how they play or how they start their season, how we start ours. But for me, Casemiro and Amrabat is a viable partnership. Very much a viable partnership. I don't know if it's more. Maybe what you could see is like what Manchester City have done with last season, where they had John Stones on the team sheet. It looks like he's playing at right back, right? Because that's where he is defensively. But then you have him move into midfield when you have possession. So essentially, in possession you're a 3-2-4-1, and out of possession you are a 4-1-4-1. Or a 4-2-3-1, dependent on how the team moves or how it operates. Maybe Mason Mount drops in to be a 4-2-3-1 in a more defensive scenario, with Amrabat playing wherever else. I suppose I think it is going to. I think what we want is to have Amrabat there, so there is, if Casemiro is not available, we've got cover, right? That's I think priority number one. Casemiro is not available, we have optimal cover. And I think that's when we cover first base, we can then talk about, we can then entertain the idea of Casemiro and Amrabat play together, or Casemiro starts, Amrabat on the bench, or vice versa. I think if Amrabat walks in and just starts absolutely dominating the league, and it's not even close, then I can't have many complaints if Casemiro gets benched for Amrabat. But it's probably not going to happen, because Casemiro, multi-time Champions League winner and a Rolls Royce of a defensive midfielder. I know we use the term for Rafael Varane, the Rolls Royce centre back. I think as long as we can cover first base, that we've got enough options in depth. Once the depth's sorted in the defensive midfield position, I think we can start talking about how experimental we can be with all these different pieces we can play around with. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Is definitely a sought after signing that I would like for United to make, and it's dirt cheap as well. It also offers every excuse to get rid of deadwood players that for some reason people keep trying to give second chance after second chance after second chance. I mean, for God's sakes, it's like I've seen clips with Harry Maguire in the Arsenal game where he was dealing with pressure well. He was adjusting to the system well. He's doing an excellent job. Little steps at a time. We can support him. We can back him. The guy's been here for about 3 to 4 years, right? He has not led this team to any amount of success full stop. He was benched when we went to win the Carabao Cup. He was benched. He was not around. Stop giving him second chances. Everyone literally is, and I'll tell you, some of the people that are most guilty of this are the same ones that when he has a howler of a game, they're on his back instantly. But then they'll see a clip surface where Harry Maguire has a good 5-minute spell period in a game, and they'll sing his praises on football Twitter. And you'll see all of these posts and all the support come flooding in. It's just like, oh my God. If I could puke in my mouth right now, if I can do it on command, I would do it right now. Seriously, it makes my skin crawl to see that this flip-flop nature in how people perceive players at this club that are past it, and they do not offer us anything anymore. Scott McTominay in the same boat. He's been here for so many years. He's been here for so many years. What are we doing? What if he gets to like 32, 33 and he's somehow still at this club? What is it? Are we and by the way, if he doesn't actually turn into a world beater and he's still this mediocre player, are we still going to see people saying, give him another chance, give him another chance? I mean, Jesus Christ. We are not second chance FC. We want the best. We demand the best. Twitter is a different planet with not much logic, if any at all. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, the only reason really why I have any involvement with football Twitter is where I can get my news from. It's where I get my news from. But it's like these accounts like United Trey. I mean, fingers crossed that guy stays banned off of Twitter, right? Fingers crossed. Yeah, he stays banned. That guy has literally cursed this club. Since he has been suspended, football Twitter has actually been hella chill. It's been hella chill since he's been banned. So, and by the way, everything he says, United Trey, anything he says, the complete polar opposite happens. So for everyone's sake, please, Elon Musk with your SpaceX project turning football Twitter into X Twitter or football X. We'll have to call it football X now. And Jesus Christ, please keep him off the platform. Keep him off the platform. We don't want to be cursed. We don't want our luck to be flushed down the toilet. Yes, read and don't comment is the best option for Twitter. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people, right, that have come off of social medias or come off of Twitter. I suppose it's a bit like Rodri for Manchester City, who doesn't have any social medias. Like the best thing you'll find for Rodri on social media are fan accounts or football stan accounts, right? Yeah, Rodri stands. You're not going to actually find the proper Rodri, even though you get the case that most players in football have media teams. It's like Marcus Rashford has his own media team that does all of his social media posts, which, by the way, I still can't believe that with Marcus Rashford's PR team, that they've actually got the bollocks to constantly use Chat GPT, the AI chatbot, to concur statements to post on his socials. He has been caught out for it twice. Marcus, get someone who knows how to write posts. Please, for the love of God. It was after Liverpool 7-0 that he's put, like, after a couple of days, he put out a post that said, it's not like us, we've got to do better. Someone found on ChatGPT with an automated statement generator that they found a copy of that word for word on that same website. Literally, the bot generated the exact same statement. I was like, what? No, for God's sakes. And the fact that people find that out about that after 7-0, Jesus, you're lucky that you don't become public enemy number one. The second time was David De Gea's farewell message, where they accidentally on his Instagram post stuck a caption that you get that gets generated at the top of the page when you put in a search result or something. You'll get, here's some examples of this statement. They actually put the, here's some examples of some statements in the Instagram post caption. I'm like, no effing way. They edited it out, but everyone called them up on it. So what did they do? They disabled the comments on the post. You could not comment on that post. It wasn't because of no David De Gea abuse, it's because everyone was calling Marcus Rashford out for his god awful PR team. It was absolutely hilarious to see, but also embarrassing at the same time. I'll tell you what. Oh, Marcus Rashford, please, for the love of God, just go get a new media team. Someone who actually can speak from the heart and actually translate that onto a digital format. Then happy days. You can go ahead and get on with what you want to get on with. But yes, interesting things on that front there. In other news, Dan Gore and Rhys Bennett, academy options, are both signed new deals. Don't know on what everyone thinks about that. I know Dan Gore's had one or two good games. I think Bennett had a couple of fairly stable, fairly easy-going games, I would say, on the preseason tour against Leeds and Olympic Lyon. Was that no? Actually, no. Rhys Bennett didn't play against Lyon. That was Will Fish and Johnny Evans. But good. It's good to see with some of those players. I don't really know if there's any chance or any possibilities that we're ever going to see them ever make it into the first team. Laurie Whitwell has spoken as well publicly about MESC scouting, that they'd also seen Mike Maignan. I think that's the other goalkeeping name that was shortlisted at the time of Andre Onana as well. But that move did not materialise, or talks didn't materialise with that because the price tag was adjusted, shall we say. It was adjusted to £86 million for Mike Maignan. This was after the fact that Sandro Tonali was sold to Newcastle. Crazy stuff that every club is trying to milk this market. Definitely, everyone's trying to milk this market. But I suppose why not? Because there's always going to be people out there that will pay if they're desperate enough. Erik ten Hag was in contact also with Denzel Dumfries' agent, Yalcin. I think it's Yalcin Sarika or Sarisa, when his representative brought up Andre Onana. This was set to be the lighting of the fuse for the deal. So essentially what's been said there was, we were speaking to Denzel Dumfries when his agent said, well, actually, it's not, Denzel Dumfries is probably not going to happen as easy, but Andre Onana, this is the situation with him. And so obviously the deal started, the deal began. And obviously now Andre Onana, who's now at Manchester United, I think based off of the agent's recommendation, I think, I applaud you, sir. I applaud you, good sir. Saved us some good money as well on a goalkeeping deal, as well as the wages as well. I mean, I'll tell you what, the wages are significantly less than what David De Gea was on previously. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's gone from like 260 upwards to like 270,000 down to 100,000 weekly wages just on the goalkeeping position alone. I mean, that's a lot of money saved on the wages. But it is what it is. Whatever happens with the wages, I suppose. Just as long as the player is worth it, I don't really have many complaints about it. But yes, Jamie Jackson had also stated that Spurs' £100 million valuation for Harry Kane isn't said to be a major issue for MUFC. So that's interesting. that is um, that is interesting, definitely interesting to see. Put that agent in charge of our transfers. I mean, Jesus Christ, if he's gonna be good with recommending us some, lucrative, cheaper options or alternatives that have the quality as well. Whew. It's like Sven Mislintat with Arsenal, only around for one summer transfer window, and I was so surprised when he left because I was just like, bro, this guy is picking players left, right, and centre for Unai Emery, but then politics of the club meant that he left straight after the summer transfer window or soon after, like a couple of months or something. And I was just like, I was so baffled by that, and it's just like, oh Jesus, a different transfer policy. Then following every transfer window after that meant that Sven Mislintat's project, you never really got to you never really got to see what it was all about. But if we can have someone that can offer us, it's like Ralph Ranić, with some proper, cheap market scouting with player potential just through the roof, I'd be all down for it. 100% I'd be all down for it. I suppose one thing we'd want to get sorted out first is that the first team are essentially at a level of quality that's comparable to prime Galacticos, right? Get a squad in the first team to that level and then just keep bringing all of these potential in. Just keep bringing all that potential in and we'll bed them in. We'll fit them into the system. We'll raise them up. We'll flourish them and we'll have talents just coming through the academy every couple of years or so. Just unbelievable talents that then take the spots on the first team. I'd just love to have that. I'd absolutely love to have that. I suppose that every other fan would really, really wish that they could have a club that just had that sweet system in place where you'd see the best young talents coming through and flourishing in the first team that is built to win absolutely everything in like there is to win in football. Like, the foundations, got to get them on point. Then everything else that comes with it tastes that little bit extra sweet. Lovely stuff. But yes, the 100 million. So supposedly, according to Jamie Jackson, the 100 million valuation for Harry Kane isn't set to be a major issue, but it's his salary demands in the region of £30 million a year is what makes the Harry Kane deal more difficult. The problem is that the public funds that we have, or the published funds, the rumored funds that we've had for this whole transfer window, we've spent a big portion of it. If you told me before we'd spent a dime on any of the players, like no Mason Mount, no Andre Onana, I would have said 100 million for Harry Kane. That's a priority. Go get it done. That's that. If it's doable, then go and be ambitious and do it. Get it done. Um, but that's the thing, because now we spent money. I think the idea that we get Harry Kane for what he's worth now, I think whether you want to call it the United tax and give in to John Murtaugh's PR and say, oh, it's unfair because the United tax. Well, look, mate, listen, bad negotiators. Your word travels fast in this world, right? And in football talk, someone can whisper something in a boardroom meeting in New Zealand, and someone in Iceland can have the full rundown of what was whispered in that boardroom in less than an hour. It's like word travels at ridiculously fast speeds. So, listen, if you're a bad negotiator, everyone's going to know. Everybody's going to know because it's money. When you talk money, everyone's got to be in on it. Everyone's going to be on it. So if you have a bad reputation, you've got a lot of work to do to salvage it. They can forget 100 million now. They have to let it out. It has to be sold. I'd offer 80, take it or leave it. I think the problem is that the only problem with that, because that's a realistic thing to do. That's a realistic, transfer business. That's being real, right? That's saying, look, Harry Kane at the age of 30, 1 year left of his deal, right? He is not worth £100 million. He's not. He's nowhere near that. As far as market valuations go, they probably would sit him at about 65. So I mean, even 80 is being a bit more generous, right? Let's say if he's a 25-year-old world-class striker, you'd probably say, well, 120, 100 to 120 to 150 is what is your sort of your wiggle room, right? But the guy's 30, 1 year left on his deal. That that contract value is in the toilet compared to what a player of Harry Kane's quality is because of his age profile and because of his contract situation. The valuation is massively tanked. The problem is Daniel Levy is a stubborn ass businessman. Stubborn in some aspects, not football orientated. He is business orientated. It is business or bust. Business or bust. Like no respect, no real respect for footballing acumen. So unfortunately, that is your biggest stumbling block with anything to do with Tottenham Hotspur is Daniel Levy. And the Spurs fan, this is what's crazy. The Spurs fans know it as well, and they're pissed off, even with the fact that Harry Kane is not going. Like when people said, "Look, oh, Harry Kane's not going to be so," Spurs fans are saying, "Just let him go. Let's get the money. Let's take the money and run. At least we can spend it on other areas." I mean, they've got their own problems. They're not even signing a centre back at the moment. There's all of his talks and Links FC and all of that talking about, oh, yeah, we signed centre backs, this and centre back, that's that. Key areas in the squad that need to be addressed. Daniel Levy, that Spurs board, Jesus Christ, so stubborn. Honestly, I mean, fantastic work with James Maddison and Solomon. I think his name is Solomon and Vicario. Cool, get those business bits, those pieces of business done, but everything else about that, about Tottenham at the moment, utterly ridiculous. Yeah, that's why I said 80, 65 to 70 would upset Levy. It would take. I'll tell you what it would do is if you put that bid on the table, it would probably dent his ego. It would probably dent his ego so much so that his ego would be so dented that you'd walk outside the next public sighting, you'd see a Daniel Levy, you'd see a massive like dent in his cranium right there from how much he's probably smashed his head into the desk once he saw that bid get submitted. That's probably what would happen with Daniel Levy. Levy tax is a thing. Now I can actually get by that. I can actually get by that because Daniel Levy literally, and the thing is, right, the difference between United tax or Levy tax, right? United tax, it's not because everyone just hates United. No, it's because the boards, with how they negotiate things, they've got such a poor reputation. It's such a poor reputation, and it's based off a reputation that we struggle to get the things we want at the prices we want, at the rates we want. We struggle to have our way, but our negotiators are not respected. So we can't alleviate that with, or we can't get rid of that, that lurking cloud that sits over Old Trafford half the time because we've got bad negotiators. So obviously we need the case in point of a new ownership that sacks this board and gets a new board that's competent and very good at doing their job. Whereas Daniel Levy, his Levy tax thing is for every aspect of Tottenham Hotspur. If there's anything wrong with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, Daniel Levy is the biggest enabler for everything that goes wrong at Tottenham Hotspur. The fans are a very close second. I think I did. Did I just say that he was by far the biggest? Well, he's a massive part. I mean, spot one and two, Daniel Levy, and then the Tottenham Spurs, Hotspurs fans. I mean, they're both. I'll tell you what. Some of these Spurs fans are in bed with Levy. I mean, some of the real ones, the ones that actually call it for what it is. I mean, I think someone like Stell, I think he was from Tottenham away, put out a ranting post where it's just like people, why are fans complaining? Because they don't actually take action, they don't protest, they don't do anything, despite them saying, I'm so unhappy, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And it's like, that's understandable. That is absolutely understandable. And Daniel Levy can be the most hated man in Tottenham Hotspur, but he is sat hella comfortable. hella comfortable. He hasn't got nothing to worry about because no one's challenging his position. No fan is questioning him proactively. No fan group is actively protesting for leaving out. You don't see banners and chants every single home and away game. You don't see any of that. No one's turning up outside of the Spurs Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for whenever Daniel Levy arrives because he goes to a lot of games. You don't see none of that where they sit outside where Daniel Levy goes in and sit there protesting there. You don't see that. Like Daniel Levy, honestly, Levy is one of the most hated men in football, and that's the crazy thing. He's one of the most hated men in football, right? But his average match day, he probably thinks, "How the hell am I the most hated man in football? I don't see anyone chanting my name or anything, saying that I need to leave the club. I've got no pressure. Like no one's actively calling me out. I'll sit there in the stands and stick a glum look on my face when I watch my club get battered by whoever it is. Like the time when Brentford on the last day of the season, it was actually hilarious when I was watching that game. By the way, when the camera cut to a picture of Daniel Levy in the stands against Brentford when they were getting battered 3-1, and he was sat there just like, and his wife is next to him, just like, don't worry. I think it was his wife. It might have been someone else, but sat there just comforting him, just like, oh, don't worry, Daniel, don't worry. And honestly, it was the most hilarious thing ever because it's just like, bro, that's just for the cameras. You might as well say it's just for the cameras. In fairness, we are living proof that protest versus owners and boards is not fruitful. I'd say that it works more so against the boards, not so much against the owners. I mean, the problem, and I think it was Saba said that it's from Football Heritage TV, said it spot on, that protests from Tottenham's regard against the ownership is going to be a big, big problem because, it's ENIC. They've literally, Tottenham Hotspur does not have just the ownerships and the football club anymore. There's an empire. So if Tottenham want new ownership, they're going to have to crumble the whole empire because there's so many things, right, that ENIC now exist. They have Tottenham chained up and now sit outside of the football sphere. They sit outside of it. That's what's scary for Tottenham Hotspur. ENIC sit outside the football sphere, but they have Tottenham leashed up. So that it's just an entity that they can occasionally, with all of their other business ventures left, right, and centre. It's like Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, rent it out. The stadium belongs to ENIC, not Tottenham. If Tottenham gets sold, whoever buys Tottenham off of ENIC need to go buy the stadium as well. They need to buy the stadium, not the club, the stadium. It's its own transaction because ENIC have got all of this other business going on inside that stadium. The stadium is rented out. That's actually fucking mental. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Old Trafford was rented by Manchester United Football Club, but the Glazers own the property, right? The Glazers own the property and they stick Tampa Bay Buccaneers in some of their American football games inside Old Trafford. Could you imagine that? Oh, that would make me so sick to my stomach. But protest against board members, Ed Woodward is a good example of it because the pressure. I mean, Ed Woodward was pretty comfortable as well. He was kind of in Daniel Levy's world. He was comfortable until Super League happened. Everyone got super pissed off with Ed Woodward. People turned up outside his house. They turned up outside his house. And that guy was just like, nope, I'm getting out of Dodge. I am leaving the club. Why would he do that? He's in bed with the ownership that, they're all in the same boat, right? So why would one jump ship? He's a business orientated person. He's a business orientated person. Sure, like you get protests of Glazers out and all of that. I mean, sure, you'll get a lot of people making Woodward out trending, but a Twitter trend ain't gonna mean jack shit to anybody. It's not gonna mean anything. It's just words. But it changes when things get more physical, when you start seeing people you don't recognize, very angry faces, standing outside your front door and saying, "Y'all get your ass out of Dodge before I come in there and torch your place down." Like, seriously, because people turned up like that and people ramped up hella pressure on Ed Woodward, of course it's going to force his hand. He jumped ship. He absolutely jumped ship because he knew, Dad, this is getting out of control. 6 billion from Qatari Sheikh might change Tottenham's ownership. I think it's one of those where I think we'll have to see what happens. I think dependent on what happens, because I know Tottenham Hotspur aren't actively on the market for sale or anything, but if a bid's big enough or lucrative enough comes in, I'm sure it's something that will be entertained. I think it also depends on what ENIC's aspirations are, whether they'll be happy to receive a fat lump sum in a check or something to sell the club. If the money is there, a business billionaire, if you talk money, they're going to listen, right? If you talk money, they'll listen. Every billionaire's the same. Every businessman's the same. You talk money, someone's going to listen. So I think it really depends on what offer ends up on the table, and based around what sort of fee that they're talking about, what sort of region that they're going to, what ballpark they're going to be playing with the bids in. I don't really know what sort of a ballpark ENIC would be happy to entertain offers for Tottenham Hotspur. I don't know what ballpark they'd be playing in, but it's probably going to be, again, an excessive overvaluation of the club, I'd imagine, because of the facilities that you have. 100% it's going to be, they'll milk it. They'll milk it. They'll be like the Glazers, I reckon. They will. Woodward was there way too long for me. He was there, like, he shouldn't have been appointed in the first place. He really shouldn't. He came in to CEO position pretty much when Ferguson retired. I'm pretty sure he joined the CEO position. I might be wrong on that. He might have been there sooner or earlier. I know John Murtaugh's been at the club for ages and ages and ages, and Richard Arnold's been Woodward's right-hand man since Woodward joined the club. Richard Arnold, I think, joined at the same time. I might be wrong on that as well, but I mean, don't crucify me. I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. But yeah, Woodward was there for way too long. The guy had an insufferable ego for business, and it's just like, I want to be the guy. I want to be this guy. I want to be that guy. And you could just tell the business he did stunk of it. Absolutely stunk of it. So have a real quick ganders. MUFC will be in line for Harry Kane should Spurs decide to entertain offers from Premier League clubs. Ooh, but Daniel Levy won't be so happy. Can't fault him on business, but he had no football knowledge. And that's the thing, because he's a banker. He's a banker, so he will know the ins and outs of every market that there is on the planet. He'll know the ins and outs. Like he'll know it like a back of his hand. If you want to talk about business side of things or banking or whatever, Woodward would probably be one of the better people to speak to on this planet. Literally. But god damn, it's like someone who's not educated in football, who's money orientated, and who's ego driven as well, because some of the statements he's made down the years about the United fan base. I mean, he's the one that called us hysterical and said that our opinions, our thoughts and feelings should never be taken seriously because the fans are hysterical. That's him. That's him all over. I suppose that's just one of the things. One of the things. Ahmad says his injury is nothing serious and he'll be back soon. Will he be back in time for the first game of the season? We'll have to see. I mean, it was a weird one because I looked back at the replay of when Amad Diallo went down. I mean, I don't know if people have actually seen it from different angles. What happened to Amad Diallo when he went down injured? Because I know he was running around. He was up there, sort of pressing Arsenal a little bit, and he looked okay. Like he was strutting around. He was strutting around absolutely fine. There's a camera cut to someone about to take a throw in. The camera cuts back, and Ahmad's on the floor, and he's just in pain. He's holding his joints and everything. I'm like, what? What happened there? So people were saying, "Oh, Urian Timber injured him." Well, apparently not. Not from those camera angles. No one touched him. He was nowhere near him. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe the cameras didn't show something that I haven't seen. Also, can we just acknowledge, right, that Pep Guardiola must be absolutely punching the air right now? Like, in absolute dismay and heartbreak. Like, poor Pep Guardiola. Julie Roberts, the United fan, one of his favourite actresses, has posed for pictures and all of that with Eric Ten Hag and a couple of the United players. That guy was heartbroken when Julie Roberts went to Manchester and did not even think once to go to see Manchester City. I would imagine crutches are used as a precaution sometimes. You could say that, yeah. I think the protective boot is probably also one of those precautionary measures. I know that, what was his name? Arsenal, Fabio Vieira was wearing a protective boot when he signed for the club. And some people say, oh, it's just as a precaution or something, but others were saying, well, no, he's just outright injured. I think Amad Diallo is probably picked up a knock where it's like a strain or a swelling on a joint or something, and usually that clears up in like a week or so, and then you have to then do some tests, some rigorous testings to check out the joints, as just how it operates really. Pep is letting players go and not really replacing them so far. What was he up to? It's an interesting thing, actually. It is interesting. I know that there's this Vardial transfer that's meant to be happening, which is actually quite funny because Fabrizio Romano has been the guy essentially that has been on this subject, and what he's been doing is he's been saying, well, look, it's essentially a here we go for Vardial to City. It is. What's funny is that Vardial has been showing pictures and like uploads media posts and everything where he's doing everything with Leipzig. He's still doing everything with Leipzig. He's still training with them. He got on a plane on the same day that there was news that came out to say, well, you know, Vardial had medical tests for Manchester City. I'm like, why is he getting on a plane? Hello? Why is he getting on a plane? So their Vardiol transfer is completely up in the air, and it's honestly, I don't know what has happened to Manchester City as of late. I think it's like their golden generation with or their golden team that won the treble, like the players that they signed to get that team put together. They got with like relative ease. They looked really good. They looked really swift, and it's like their transfer activity was really good. For some reason, I don't know if it's just me, but I honestly feel like that there's several transfer windows now that Manchester City have been underwhelming, like really underwhelming on their activity. Now, last season you would say, well, look, they didn't look busy in the transfer window, and you know in how they went into the season, they ended up winning the treble, and you'd say, well, yeah, that's fair enough. People have completely forgotten the absolute dismay that they were in halfway through the season, where they thought, oh my God, Arsenal going to run away with the league. And there were those questions happening at the time, and City fans were just like, look, who's better to start? That people were seriously asking, do we start Haaland? Is Haaland a good fit for Man City? People were asking that question at the time. They were seriously doubting, what Pep Guardiola had planned, what was going on, who was doing what in the team, and whether it should be Julian Alvarez starting up top instead of Erling Haaland. There were those questions going on, and I'll tell you what, there's elements with this Man City team where it's like where Pep's had to go and change the system halfway through a season, found success with that. But Manchester City, they've sold off a lot of these players, right? With Mahrez going, I think Bernardo Silva's decided to stay. Gundogan's gone, right? Gundogan has gone. Trying to think of who else has left as well. There's probably a few other names I can't really think of. But it's interesting. It is interesting. There are question marks over what's his name? Phillips. Pretty sure it's Phillips, yeah. I think there's question marks about Phillips as well. I don't know if there is, because I know with the Vardiol transfer, that's supposed to be happening. I mean, Jesus, the deal was stable, and then it's just completely got lost control. It's completely lost control. So I don't know what's going on for Manchester City. They signed Kovacic, and then that was it. They signed Kovacic. I don't think they've really signed anyone else as of yet. Maybe they're trying to straighten the cooked books. Now eyes are on them. I'm not really too sure. I'm not really too sure because I suppose what they do now won't fully matter. Well, I'd probably say it won't fully matter because what they're being investigated for is what's happened over a certain period of time. There's a documentary. I think the Football Terrace linked it, but there is a documentary about Manchester City's charges and essentially where they've come from, like what started the people looking at Manchester City and questioning their legitimacy, and they basically covered the full timeline of everything. Especially, I don't know if they covered I can't remember if they covered the whole like dodgy PO box, where it's like the PO box for a major sponsor was literally just a post box in like randomly in London somewhere, and it's just like what the fuck, this is from major companies just pumping in millions and millions of pounds every single year, and it's just a little post box. That's a very very rich post box, I'll tell you that much. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they're trying to cover tracks, maybe they're not. I think based off of what's going on at the moment with the investigation, it's based off of what's already happened, but rather not what's still going on or what's set to happen. I don't really know. But they've got their own lawyers sorting things out in that regard, and we'll have to see. Are they innocent or are they guilty? I think time will be the biggest teller of that. I'm just going to scroll through everything. Just have a little look, see if there's anything else to wrap this up with. It's been live for 82 minutes. 82 minutes, over an hour and 22 minutes. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Oh, yes, Andre Onana. As for the reason why he's chosen the number 24, as he says, he likes the shirt number. It's his birthday. It's my date of birth. For me, I like the shirt. He's the 24th. Like me. It's my birthday today as well. So happy days. Me and Andre Onana share a birthday. Probably not this month, though, by the way. It's probably a 24th of some other month, but same day of the month. Who cares? Who cares? I'll take credit for that. I'll take every little win I can. But by the looks of it, there's nothing else really trending. Don't think there is anything else trending. Eric Bailly and Fred will be sold, most likely to raise extra funds for the striker signing, which is a strange thing to say, considering we supposedly got enough money just outright to bid for Rasmus Højlund. I don't mean to fill the chat. I just get the thoughts. I share hate. and share. I hate to see it not moving. Literally, the thing is that because we've not got lots of viewers, mate, literally, I'm not expecting there to be much chatting going on. These, like me live streaming now, is based off of literally what happened with my watch along. Because with my watch along, my any streams that I'd done before the Leeds watch along game that I did was like overall accumulated views between being live, but also from people watching it on playback. The viewerships were not even surpassing 10 views. The first stream that I did with the watch along on Leeds nearly is surpassed 500, and there was people tuning in every like couple of minutes. Some people said hi, some people, subscribe, some people like the stream, and it was just like straight away. Every stream I've done since then, none of them have been empty, and it's seriously like super cool to see that. Yeah, I've gone from essentially having no viewers and speaking for an hour and trying to find up topics to keep the show going, to make every section of the stream seem interesting. God, it was so difficult to do. So I basically moved over to doing shorter videos and just covering key topics and doing uploads. Um, ooh, but yeah, no, really, seriously, I appreciate for everyone, even if the viewerships are low, I massively appreciate for everyone who does come in, who does like the streams, who does subscribe to the channel, but more importantly, who does also leave chats in or leaves messages in chats, but also comments on playback and on pre-records. All this sort of interaction, seriously, it helps the channel tick. So everyone that does do that, seriously, I massively appreciate everyone who does do things like that, because it massively helps me on my end of things, and it seriously makes things a lot more exciting and a lot more fun. The shows are a lot more fun with you guys around, 100%. So yeah, don't feel that you're annoying anyone by being the only chatter or something. Like seriously, having you there and chatting helps with the show and helps with the flow of the show. So you are appreciated, and you are loved to be here, regardless of whatever it is that you want to say. And sometimes you help to encourage different topics that perhaps I've not had planned to covered. So it's you have your uses. You have your uses to content creators, and it's not just with me. It's with all the other content creators out there as well who live stream. Fabrizio just put up a video about talking about a Felix bomb, and Rafinha. Any ideas on what it's about? And we have a quick ganders here actually. Oops, nearly clicked on that. Have a quick ganders. Let's have a quick read. That's interesting. I can't actually see any video about Felix or anything. It might be on his Instagram or something. I can't see anything on his channel. But if that video does come out, I'll be sure to read into it, because I know a lot of people take what he says on his shows and then re-uploads it in the Twitter threads or Twitter posts and a certain string of posts and whatnot. So I mean, I'll have a look. I'll have a look into it. But Felix, if anyone is interested about any thoughts from me about Felix, I said a few times already that if we get Rasmus Højlund in and we can sign Felix on loan for a season, just so we've got, because obviously to wrap up the funds to sign a player permanently is going to be a pain in the arse. We are not going to be able to sign João Felix on a permanent, but if you can have someone in that offers something different and adds extra depth onto the attacking side of our game, to the attacking side of our team, João Felix is one of the few players that you can sign on loan that is actually a higher level of quality. So it's an avenue that I would explore. I absolutely would. but it would have to be as like one of the last signings you make as Joao Felix comes in, and he is, an extra to providing depth, because Anthony Martial and Rasmus Højlund, you can say, well, what happens if Rasmus Højlund's not available and Martial gets injured? Then who else plays? Because we ain't got no super veggie Wout Weghorst. Haven't got him. Maybe Rashford goes up top, or maybe even Sancho. Sancho's been playing at striker for 3 games straight, and that's probably Ten Hag experimenting a more false 9 approach with the strikers. But anyways, I'll definitely have a little look into that. But yes, I think for an hour and 30 minutes, I think I shall wrap up the show there. I'm going to chill and unwind for the rest of my birthday, for my birthday before it is over, before the day is out. So I'm going to love you and leave you. I'm going to wrap this up. So big ups to everyone who's tuned in, who has liked the stream, who has subscribed, and who has chatted in the chat, who has interacted. You've honestly helped the show tick along and have provided some good entertainment for me as to whether everyone else is entertained. Leave your thoughts and feelings in the comment section on playback below. But yeah, massive appreciations to all of those of you that tuned in, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Not many see it, but Weghorst holds up and creating space for others to score, helped us qualify for Champions League last season. I think as much as that's good, everything else he had to offer, we need someone that can score goals and can score quite frequently. But otherwise, you would want a player that is assisting. I mean, I suppose where you get the case where build-up play happens, and Wout Weghorst is the first to receive a long ball and control it to bring other players into play. Essentially, he's only good up to then. Like, he wasn't very pacey. He couldn't beat an offside trap. He wasn't beating players off of a dribble, and he wasn't like getting into good goal-scoring positions where a teammate could pick him out. And the other side of that problem, the other side of that coin, is that we weren't creating enough. We weren't creating enough last season. But I think with what we're doing this season, we look like we're going to be creating more. And obviously, signing some more midfielders and creators is going to massively, massively help us with that case. So, I mean, Rasmus Højlund is essentially a very, very pacey Wout Weghorst that's got a bit of bit more of a promising eye for goal, even though he's not really got any good goal scoring records. Reminds me of Heskey, hardly ever scored, but helped the team. I suppose with I mean, Emil Heskey though was essentially it became a meme material. I mean, he wasn't a bad striker. He wasn't a bad, terrible striker. I mean, he had his heydays, but I think towards the end of his career, and I think that's the problem about Weghorst. I'll tell you what, about Weghorst probably would be way more appreciated if he was Wout Weghorst from his prime Wolfsburg days, when he was like 26, 27, when he was back in those days where Mark Goldbridge had an unbridled hatred towards him. Back in those days, a guy who had some pace, he looked clinical, he had a proper eye for goal. He was actually one of the underrated strikers in Europe. Unfortunately, he's lost his edge of pace. He's not as quick. He's a bit clunky, does some of the simple things well, but aside from that, he's not. He doesn't have much more to his game than that, and I think that's the only real problem for Wout Weghorst now. But because he's essentially on the wrong side of 30 now, he's not going to get that back. So kind of sucks for him. But I mean, even the Burnley fans, I mean, Jesus Christ, I think he got subbed on in the Burnley pre-season game. And man, them Burnley fans were booing him. They were booing Wout Weghorst when he got subbed on. I mean, God only knows. But anyways, I'm going to hop off now. So everybody, have a blessed rest of your Mondays. Do be sure to chill out and enjoy the rest of your Mondays and whatever it is you're doing, whether you're watching some other pre-season football games or whether you're filling your days with all other activities, whatever it may be. Maybe you decide to go mow the lawn when there's not much daylight left. Maybe you decide to go paint a fence or water the garden. Maybe you choose to go do that. Who knows? Maybe you decide to go service your car. Whatever it is, go and enjoy it and go make good worth of your time. But that's it from me today, and big ups to everybody. We'll see you again in the next one. Goodbye for now.